The New York Times is reporting the so-called Godfather of artificial intelligence is sounding the alarm about the dangers of AI. Geoffrey Hinton says he feels so strongly about the issue, he quit his job at Google just to talk about it. ABC's Lionel Moise has the latest.
As companies race to integrate artificial intelligence into our everyday lives, one man behind that technology has resigned from Google after more than a decade. Geoffrey Hinton, known as the Godfather of Artificial Intelligence, says he stepped down so he can freely discuss the dangers of AI. He tells the New York Times he's worried about artificial intelligence taking jobs from people and also misinformation, with fake videos, photos, and texts saying the average person will not be able to know what is true anymore. And he warns it is hard to see how you can prevent the bad actors from using it for bad things. He joins a growing list of industry experts calling for regulation. Elon Musk tweeting, even benign dependency on AI automation is dangerous to civilization if taken so far that we eventually forget how the machines work.
It is, I think, actually a bigger risk to society than cars or planes or medicine.
One recent breakthrough, a non-invasive AI system that can turn our thoughts into text, saying it could one day help people who've lost their ability to speak due to a stroke or paralysis. Researchers have also found AI can more efficiently and effectively identify cancer, and we've already seen how programs like chatgpt can write speeches, answer complex questions, and even pass the bar exam. The CEO of the company behind chatgpt says the advancements are exciting, but also terrifying.
Part of the exciting thing here is we get continually surprised by the creative power of all of society.
I think that word surprise, though, it's both exhilarating as well as terrifying to people.
Sure. I think people should be happy that we're a little bit scared of this.
Our thanks to Lionel Moise for that report. Meanwhile, a new study is showing patients may prefer AI to real doctors when it comes to getting bad news. ABC's Brad Mielke, host of the Start Here podcast, joins me now for more on that. Brad, I'm fascinated by this story, but before we get to that, I just want to get your quick take on this warning from Geoffrey Hinton. What do you make of what he's saying, and how surprising is it to hear this coming from, of all people, him?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is his status in the sort of AI community is really unparalleled in some ways. So shocking that he would be like, I need to take a step back just so I can be more public about the concerns here. And he's talking about a couple concerns. One is this idea that AI has become so convincing, uses such, sophisticated language models, that it's very convincing even when it doesn't necessarily know what it's saying is true. And so we've talked about AI-generated photos that are fake. We've talked about AI-generated articles that might not have been fact-checked. And so he says that that is a concern there that we have to look out for. The other thing he says then is about control. Like, how many times can we remember where, like, less intelligent species have been able to reliably control more intelligent species? And he says we are creating essentially a more intelligent species using the stuff that we're feeding into it. Like, we can say that it's not as if machines are going to start building other Terminator machines. But what he is saying is if you put restrictions on AI-generated content, you say, listen, you can say this, but not this. Well, I'm sorry, the whole idea of AI chatbots, for instance, is to evade detection, is to sound more human.
Right.
We are teaching them essentially how to manipulate us.
Ooh, it sounds so dystopian when you put it that way. Though this other story that you're covering is fascinating. This new study showing patients may prefer AI to real doctors when it comes to asking and answering certain questions, delivering certain news. Break this down for us.
Yeah, so this was a study that came out of researchers from UCSD and some other places, where they basically took a bunch of questions, medical questions on social media where people are asking about medical stuff. And they take answers from doctors, and then they compare those answers to what they got from chatgpt when they put these questions into chatgpt, the chatbot, and got the answers back. And they assigned each of these answers an empathy score. How empathetic is this answer? ChatGPT blew these human doctors out of the water. Like, it was seen as much more empathetic. It was telling people what really made them feel more seen in a way that the human doctor, it was being more humane than the human doctors. Wow. And so I talked to Art Kaplan. He's an ethicist at NYU's School of Medicine. And he basically said, like, this is sort of what you're going to see more and more because of how sophisticated these language models are.
Oh, it's so interesting. So what did Kaplan say about how important the role of empathy is when you come to practicing medicine? Because I don't know if we all have, but I certainly have gone to certain doctors because I knew they were great at, this or that, diagnoses. But people would say, but he has zero bedside manner, or she has zero bedside manner.
Right.
So how important is that when it comes to medicine?
Yeah, how much does it actually matter, right? And I asked him, he said, well, imagine you come to a doctor with a migraine, and the doctor says, lots of people get migraines. We have medicine for that. Perfectly legitimate answer. Then the other doctor says, that sounds terrible. Like that can totally affect your life. That can debilitate people. I've seen it happen. We're going to take this seriously. Both of these answers are correct,
right?
But one of them is clearly more empathetic. And he says that ends up being a difference than when patients are coming to you with their issues. Part of your work as a doctor is actually to get the patient to open up to you, because they will give you more information that then you can diagnose them better with. So if somebody's talking about a sexual disorder and they don't feel comfortable with you as their doctor to have any empathy for them, they're not actually going to tell you what's going on. He says that makes a big difference to doctors.
So interesting. Sometimes we're so caught up in, oh, what's the right answer? What's the right medication? Right. We forget about the human part, even though we are the people here.
Right.
Now, doctors, though, they are already using AI as a tool. So could we see the world where, they're kind of working together in this way? Maybe the doctor's the one coming up with the prescriptions and whatnot, but the chatbot is actually the one giving you the answers?
Well, and Kaplan even said, you could imagine a world where chatbots are doing the intake. If they're so good at being empathetic, if they're giving you more human answers, maybe you're signing online first and talking to them first. Although it's important to note, when we compare the empathy between them, we're not actually talking about who's getting the answer right.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a given. This study did not look at whether the answers are actually correct that the chatbot's giving you. And that's one of Kaplan's concerns is it's all well and good to talk about empathy. And by the way, this almost says more about our medical system than it does about chatbots, right? It says doctors don't have a lot of time.
They're so spread thin.
Doctors are so spread thin, they're going between people. And computers don't run out of patience. They don't run out of time.
You have a headache? Okay, great. You're going to take this medication.
Exactly.
Let's move on to the next.
The issue here is that when you're talking about sort of chatbots assigning, answers and empathy, is sometimes that's the best answer, the one that sounds the best, is not always the one the patient needs. So Kaplan talks specifically about, if chatbots, their whole thing is sort of sussing out human language to hear what the patient will want to hear. Cool, except sometimes you want your doctor to say, actually, I've been looking at this. This is different. This is unique. I'm not going to give you the general answer. We're actually going to go sort of off the beaten path here because I'm treating you as a more specific human, not as sort of the law of averages.
I had this circumstance, and I'm sure a lot of other people can relate, where someone gets some bad medical news, they go to a doctor, the doctor recommends something and says something they don't want to hear, so they go from doctor to doctor to doctor until they find any doctor that will tell them the news that they want. And I've been in the position of having to convince a family member, listen, I know this sounds great, but this is the thing that's going to help you. And that thing that they didn't want to hear saved their life. So this could get very slippery.
Well, especially because there's still not a whole lot of regulation as to what is actually controlled. Like, do you have the right to know that you're talking to a chatbot when you're doing that intake? That's not necessarily outlined in regulations right now. And Kaplan says, as an ethicist, that's the next frontier here, is deciding what do patients actually have the right to know and what are companies going to want to create. If we're talking about doctors being spread thin, it actually sounds great. Like, let's have, more machines take on a little bit more of the work, but then what is the patient entitled to know as they're going through all that?
Ooh, tricky, tricky. Brad, I know you're staying on top of it for us. So excited to hear more. Thank you.
Thanks.
And you can hear Brad dive into more stories like this on the Start Here podcast from ABC News. New episodes drop weekday mornings at 6 a.m. Eastern, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.